The next gym for us to go up against is in Cerulean City, and to get there, we need to go through Mount Moon. On the way there, I catch a Nidoran on Route 3 who I name King, and in the Pokemon Center at the entrance of Mount Moon, a shifty guy calls me over and offers to sell me a Magikarp for 500 Poké-Dollars. Is that way too much money for a Magikarp? Yes, absolutely. However, I know what happens to Magikarp who gets sold in such dodgy ways, and it's usually not good. So I cough up the money and get the Magikarp who I name Drayden. Since Drayden and King are in need of a bit of training, I decide to send Basby over to the professor for a little while, then head back to Route 3 to train up my new boys. Once King is able to fight his own battles, we enter Mount Moon and are instantly ambushed by a Zubat. It doesn't seem to be an intentional attack though, because the Zubat is blind. He literally has no eyes. I don't really want to hurt the little Zubat, so I decide to catch him so that I can toughen him up, and I give him the name Kaname. While making my way through Mount Moon, I ran into a group of people who call themselves Team Rocket. I didn't really pay much attention to them though, since they weren't exactly challenging opponents. But on the other hand, I found a scientist who had actually found the fossils Team Rocket was searching for, and he put up quite a fight to protect them. Or at the very least, he did while using his Grimer. That thing was bulky and it took a lot out of Victor before it was finally knocked out. I switched over to Nezuko to deal with his next two Pokemon though, because ever since she learned the move Hyper Fang, it's pretty much game over once I send her into battle. Also, I can't even be mad about the bulky Grimer, because it was thanks to that battle that Victor was able to evolve into Ivysaur. For some reason, seeing the way me and my other Pokemon celebrated Victor's evolution made the scientist want to share the fossils he found with me. So I chose the one that looked like it had a bug shape on it, and then we headed out to find some fresh air because Victor's leaves were starting to wilt from being in the cave for so long. Once out of the cave, we hung around on Route 4 for a bit, and while training against each other, I had two more evolutions. King evolved into Nidorino, and Kago evolved into Pidgeotto. And the timing of this could have not been more perfect, because as soon as we got to Cerulean City, we ran into Gary, and he wanted to compare our new Pokemon by battling it out. Gary's Pidgey had also evolved into Pidgeotto, and it actually managed to dodge Nezuko's Hyper Fang. At least the first one anyways, it wasn't so lucky for the next two. Next, Gary sent out his own Rattata, so I switched over to Kachan, who didn't find him nearly as cute as Nezuko and one-shot it. Next was another new Pokemon for Gary, an Abra. Now, knowing that Abra doesn't know any attacking moves, I decided that this was the perfect opportunity to train up Drayden, because while everyone was training outside of Mount Moon, they didn't want him feeling left out, so they actually taught him how to focus his little side flops into tackles. Of course, I could have had Drayden take out the Abra all by himself, but I didn't want him facing off against Gary's starter until he knows the Stab Water move, so I switched over to King, who knocked out the poor Abra. Finally, Gary sent out his starter, who was surprisingly still a Charmander at this point. I didn't make any comments on this though, and King was able to knock it out with a couple of double kicks, meaning that once again we had beaten Gary. Gary wasn't too bitter about his defeat this time around and told me that he recently visited the Pokemaniac Bill, who helped him fill in some pages of his Pokédex. Personally, I think that's cheating since he's the one who wanted it to be a race, but whatever. He also mentioned that Bill is the person who invented the technology to transfer Pokemon between distant places, and that I should go see him, which I'm guessing is another one of his poorly veiled attempts to indirectly help me out. Ah, Gary, what would we do without him? On the way to Bill's house, I spot an Abra on Route 25 and have Victor put it to sleep so that it doesn't flee when I try to catch it. However, it somehow managed to break my Pokeball while asleep. I decided to weaken it a little before trying again, but it woke up and fled before I had the chance. Fortunately though, it didn't seem to go too far. It went towards Route 24, so I ran over and was stopped by a guy who saw me miss the Abra and then decided to challenge me to a battle, despite knowing that I was chasing after the Abra. Anyways, after defeating the socially inept weirdo, I continued my search through the grass and once again found Abra. I don't think it was the same Abra, but it was an Abra nonetheless. This time around, I had Victor put the Abra to sleep, weaken it, and then I threw the Pokeball. We were successful and I gave him the nickname Genryusai. When I got to Bill's house, I found the door open, so I walked in and saw a Clefairy. I went over to say hi and my soul actually left my body for a second because it spoke. Apparently, the Clefairy was Bill. He was doing some kind of experiment that went wrong and needed help changing back into a human. Obviously, I agreed to help, but I couldn't help wondering if it was Gary who messed up the experiment and turned Bill into a Clefairy. Probably not, since he helped Gary fill out his Pokédex. Unless this happened after he helped Gary with his Pokédex. Am I cleaning up Gary's mess? Is that why he sent me here? I don't really think I want to know. After being restored to a human, Bill offered to help me fill up my Pokédex too, but I politely declined. He still wanted to do something to thank me though, and gave me a ticket for a cruise ship docked in Cerulean City called the SS Anne, which I gladly accepted as I've never been on a cruise ship before. But before I can run off and do that, we need to take on the Cerulean City gym. After a bit more training though, learning a lesson from my last battle with Gary, the first thing we did was help Genryusai evolve into a Kadabra so that I can actually use him in battle. The next Pokemon we trained up was Nezuko, who evolved into a very fluffy Raticate. And finally, Drayden evolved into an intimidating Gyarados, meaning we were now ready to take on the gym. Once again, the plan was for Victor to take on the trainers before the gym leader, and he actually did so without taking a single hit of damage from either of the two trainers. After doing that, he was so proud and confident that he even agreed to face off against the gym leader Misty. Victor was just short of a one-shot against Misty's Staryu, and after she healed, it was just another 2 Vine Whips to knock it out. Next, Misty sent out Starmie, who I guessed would be a little harder to take out, so I had Victor use Sleep Powder to put it to sleep, Leech Seed as an extra precaution, and then we switched over to Drayden. Starmie did wake up and hit Drayden with a Swift, but he barely felt it at all, and 2 bites later, Drayden had defeated the Starmie, winning us the Cascade badge. Misty was really impressed with my powerful Water-type Pokemon, and when I told her that he didn't know any water moves yet, she gave me the TM for her favorite attack, Water Pulse. And that is how Drayden got his first ever stab water move. With Misty defeated, we now had 2 badges down and 6 to go, and the next gym just happens to be in Cerulean City, where the SS Anne awaits.